Ask everyone to take their seats. Committee will come to order. Chair recognizes herself for 5 minutes for an opening statement. Welcome to our first Energy and Commerce Committee meeting hearing of the 118th Congress, especially to our new subcommittee chairs, Jeff Duncan, who's our new chair of Energy, Climate, and Grid Security Subcommittee, and Bill Johnson, who will chair the Environment, Manufacturing, and Critical Minerals Subcommittee. Energy is foundational to every aspect of our lives, whether it's making energy more affordable and reliable, securing our supply chains, beating China, protecting the environment, addressing climate change, or putting energy security back at the center of policymaking. These should be bipartisan goals, and we've already proven they can be over the last few weeks. One of our actions on the floor was passing H.R. 22, the Protecting America's Strategic Petroleum Reserve from China Act, and it passed with 113 Democrats voting for it. And then just last week, H.R. 21, the Strategic Production Response Act, in another bipartisan vote to help ensure a vital energy asset isn't drained for non-emergency political purposes. These are just the beginning of a robust agenda to restore American energy dominance. We need to be doing more to secure and unleash American energy. Rush to green policies have had a devastating effect in Europe. Countries are rationing energy, switching back to coal-fired plants, and people are dying due to a lack of heat and electricity. America doesn't have to follow Europe down this path. Addressing emissions and unleashing abundant, affordable, and reliable energy aren't mutually exclusive. In the last decade, we've led the world in emissions reductions while increasing the availability of affordable energy through innovation. We did this while maintaining some of the highest environmental and labor standards in the world. And we must continue innovating and taking advantage of our abundant natural resources and reducing emissions. Natural gas is one of our greatest economic and strategic resources. We cannot afford to shut it down. Instead, we must expand production and continue building pipelines, the safest, most reliable infrastructure to move it around the country, and increase our capacity to export LNG to the rest of the world to reduce carbon emissions and combat Russia and China's use of energy to expand their authoritarian influence. We also have an opportunity to achieve a new renaissance in American nuclear technology and once again lead the world in its development and deployment. But to be successful, we need to rethink our restrictive regulatory approach and combat the anti-science opposition to expanding nuclear energy. We need to review the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's procedures and practices to be sure it can efficiently license new and advanced reactors. Thankfully, we're close to finishing the Vogtle plant in Georgia, but one new nuclear plant isn't enough. Ensuring safe nuclear power is essential for ensuring American energy and also for protecting the environment and addressing climate change. And we can do this without inefficient, burdensome regulations. Safety cannot be an excuse for doing nothing. To reestablish American nuclear energy globally, we need to approve and build new advanced reactors, establish a permanent spent fuel repository while exploring the potential for fuel recycling, and establish a reliable domestic fuel industry that supplies and enriches uranium and reduces our reliance on Russia. Across the board, we need to update the regulatory landscape to pave the way for energy sources and technologies of all kinds: hydropower, nuclear, natural gas, and oil, hydrogen, along with wind, solar, and batteries. Republicans support all of these technologies, but we do not support picking winners and losers through massive subsidies and rigging regulations to favor certain industries. Our energy solutions are climate solutions. We have a responsibility to our generation and future generations for cleaner water, air, and reduced emissions. Every energy technology and source has a role to play, but we need to be able to ensure that we're not becoming entirely dependent on unreliable, intermittent energy sources that rely on Chinese supply chains. It's time to flip the switch and unleash American energy. And this committee is at the very center of securing our global leadership and making people's lives better. I want to work with everyone, Republicans and Democrats, to achieve these goals. These cannot continue to be partisan issues, and my door is open to every member of this committee who wants to lead on unleashing American energy. And now I'll recognize our full committee ranking member, Mr. Pallone, for 5 minutes for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairwoman Rogers. And we just had our organizational meeting, and for those in the public, we're very proud of the fact that we now have the first woman chairperson of the Energy and Commerce Committee in its long history that goes back to almost the first days of the Republic. So let me just make that announcement. I'm sure all of you realize it, but I want to mention it again. Now, I want to say that we're meeting for the committee's first hearing of the 118th Congress. The first few weeks of any Congress are an opportunity to lay out our priorities for the next 2 years. But unfortunately, the energy bills that Republicans have brought to the floor this month have only demonstrated just how misguided and misplaced their priorities are. Both bills that were mentioned by the chairwoman, the one that dealt with the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in China, and the one that we just dealt with yesterday or last week that dealt with the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and said that we couldn't use it unless we opened up more public lands on the same percentage basis. They're both misguided because they limited this administration, or was an attempt to limit this administration's ability to bring down gasoline prices at the pump. And instead of moving towards clean energy, which is the future and the only way that we're going to have less dependence on dictators and have less volatility in the market, there was an attempt to try to give more opportunities to big oil, which frankly they don't even want, right? I mean, we know that during this, the gasoline crisis that we've had over the past year or so, this idea that somehow big oil wanted to pump more, they wanted to pump the leases they already had was simply not the case. They wanted to keep the price artificially high. That's another reason why they opposed using the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, because it brought prices down. So all I'm basically saying is, as we move towards an energy transition, let's keep in mind that encouraging renewables, as we did with the Inflation Reduction Act, as we did with the bipartisan infrastructure law, this is the way to go in the future. I am certainly one of the key people that believes that we have to use all sources of energy, whether it's nuclear, hydropower, the other things that the chairwoman mentioned, certainly all of the above. But the bottom line is that we're going to be left behind if we don't move towards renewables and encourage them the way that we did with the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, the chairwoman mentioned China. Now, make no mistake that the rest of the world, including China, are already embarked on a major transition to clean energy. In fact, China's investment in clean energy are so vast that the International Energy Agency forecasts that over the next several years, 40% of solar and wind energy growth will come from China alone. And yet, Republicans consistently oppose our efforts to catch up. If we don't move towards clean energy, if we don't use the proceeds of and the credits and the other incentives from the Inflation Reduction Act, we're going to be left behind. And that's going to mean left behind in terms of innovation, left behind in terms of the number of jobs that are created. And the irony of it is that although most, if not all, Republicans in the House voted against the Inflation Reduction Act, that many of those credits are going to the very red states and the industries in the very red states that want to take advantage of it. So this is not a Republican or Democratic issue. This is a bipartisan issue. We need to move towards clean energy. Madam Chair, I just wanted to mention that one of our witnesses today is Dr. Unra Cohen. I want to thank her for all of her work as staff director for the Select Committee on the Climate Crisis. Look forward to her testimony and the testimony of all the panel. But I just wanted to take a moment to thank our longtime staff director of our Energy and Environment Policy team, Rick Kessler, who's retiring this week. After 25 years of dedicated service to Congress, of which 12 years were spent with this committee, Rick has more than earned his retirement, Earlier in his career, Rick also worked in my personal office on energy and environmental issues. And last Congress, Rick was instrumental in our work on the Inflation Reduction Act, fighting to make sure meaningful climate investments, including many provisions from our own Clean Future Act, were included. And during his tenure, he was also instrumental in helping us pass the Frank Lautenberg Chemical Safety Act, the Pipeline Safety Act, legislation phasing down the use of dangerous HFCs, and many, many more energy and environmental laws. So he's been a devoted member of my team and our team, always guiding us by a sincere desire to improve people's lives. And I'm personally grateful for his many years of service. Wish him nothing but the best in the future. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Best, Rick. Chair recognizes Energy, Climate, and Grid Security Subcommittee Chair Duncan for 5 minutes.
Thanks for recognizing me. I first want to start by saying congratulations on holding your first hearing as Chair of Energy and Commerce Committee. You've been a champion of expanding all forms of American energy, and I look forward to working with you and the rest of the committee to deliver affordable and reliable energy to all Americans. I look forward to also getting to know my colleagues on the subcommittee on both sides of the aisle and trying to find common ground that we can work on to move America forward. I also want to thank all the Democrat members that voted for the SPR last week. It was a true bipartisan bill that voted out of the floor, and thank you for that. I want to thank the 4 witnesses that have attended the hearing today. I look forward to your insights on the state of American energy. America became the global leader in crude oil and natural gas production while also leading the world in emissions reductions. We did this by encouraging the entrepreneurial spirit in the private sector. The shale revolution is a perfect example of this. It is estimated that shale revolution saved U.S. consumers $203 billion annually. That breaks down to about $2,500 per family of 4. It also lowered energy-related greenhouse gas emissions by 527 million metric tons per year, the most in the world. American energy production and emissions reductions are not mutually exclusive. Unfortunately, Democrats and President Biden's regressive energy agenda takes a whole-of-government approach to phase out the oil and gas industry, and that's just wrong. Their agenda discourages investment, and the top-down aggressive regulatory approach seeks to create government-controlled economy and energy sectors. Republicans on energy and commerce have solutions to reverse the Democrats' regressive energy agenda. It starts with unleashing all forms of American energy by creating a regulatory structure that encourages investment and innovation to bring all forms of energy online. Energy is the foundation of our economy, and it impacts every aspect of American life. High energy prices hit low-income and middle-class Americans the hardest. According to the EIA, 1/3 of American households struggle to pay their energy bills. 1 in 5 households have to forego basic human necessities like food and medicine in order to keep the lights on and heat their homes. The Democrats' rush to green policies are making energy unaffordable for American families. High energy increases the price of everything and contributes to rising inflation. Our policies put the American consumer first, so they don't have to decide between putting food on the table or keeping the lights on. Ensuring we not only have affordable energy, but also reliable energy is critical. There's no question a secure and resilient power grid is necessary for national security and a strong economy. For these reasons, our energy grid is an attractive target for our adversaries. Pipelines, refineries, and other energy infrastructure are also extremely vulnerable to attack. Our policies must prioritize strengthening and hardening our grid and energy infrastructure. Energy security is national security, and our ability to export plays an important role in this. Since Congress lifted the crude oil export ban in 2015, we've seen the benefits of free trade and open markets in the energy sector. When America is the world leader in energy production, the world is a safer place. There's no doubt about that. We can and should export to energy-dependent countries who rely on corrupt nations. We have seen how Putin has used energy as a political weapon to keep this stranglehold over Europe. The best way to decrease the leverage of OPEC and Russia, and the best weapon against Putin, is a more aggressive U.S. energy production policy. Nuclear energy also plays a critical role in energy security. Exporting our nuclear technologies gives us the ability to set global nuclear norms. Many of our adversaries recognize this and are prioritizing building up their nuclear sector. It's time the United States takes a hard look at the regulatory obstacles that stand in the way of nuclear advancement in this country. Republicans have solutions to bring more nuclear online by addressing inefficiencies in the permitting process while also maintaining our global gold standard in nuclear safety. I look forward to working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to bring more nuclear online so that we can once again be a global leader. The ranking member mentioned China. There's no doubt that China is adding wind and solar and other renewables to their energy matrix. They're also building a heck of a lot of coal-fired power plants, fossil fuel generation, mining rare earths that they need for all the technology, which is very detrimental to the environment. So we've got to address those issues. China will be a big part of that addressing. And I want to thank Chair Rogers for holding this timely hearing. It's time to flip the switch, unleash American energy production, and achieve American energy dominance. I look forward to the hearing and from our witnesses. And with that, I yield back.
Chair recognizes Ranking Member DeGette for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. It's really fun to say that. And I want to say one of the things that makes the Energy and Commerce Committee so unique is not just our vast jurisdiction, but the willingness of members to work together in a bipartisan way to get things done for the American people. I've had the honor of serving on this storied committee since I was a freshman member of Congress. As the chair of the Oversight and Investigation Subcommittee for the past 4 years, I'm proud of the work that we did to hold the oil and gas industries accountable for the high gas prices last year and to help move our country forward. In just the past 4 years, the full committee has passed legislation to strengthen our energy infrastructure, accelerate the deployment of new clean energy technologies, and help reduce the harmful emissions that are driving the climate crisis. Thanks to those efforts, we've put our nation on course to becoming truly energy independent and no longer dependent on the global oil market, which is the goal. And so I'm hoping this hearing doesn't indicate that the majority is looking for ways to turn back the clock on that progress. I was disturbed that the majority memo that I read didn't mention renewable energy sources one single time, and instead doubled down on frankly outdated policies advocating increased fossil fuel production, which will impede U.S. energy independence and make us more, ironically, make us more dependent on an unstable international market. And that's because oil and gas is an international market, and so if we produce more here, it just goes into the international market. We've all heard the slogans, drill baby drill, energy dominance, and now energy expansion. But don't be fooled. These policies will not expand our potential for new renewable energy sources, such as wind and solar, that will only increase our dependence on oil and gas. So that will weaken our economic, environmental, and national security in the process. They're nothing more than a giveaway to the oil industry to further pad their profits. Now, like Ranking Member Pallone, I was dismayed by the early energy bills considered on the floor. Just last week, Congress considered H.R. 21, a bill that would open up our public lens to oil and gas exploitation and limit the president's ability to respond to future energy emergencies through the SPRO. We've seen this all-out push to expand oil and gas drilling before, and it just doesn't work. Last February, the United States produced more than 11 million barrels of oil per day, one of the highest levels of crude oil production in U.S. history. But when Vladimir Putin launched his war of aggression in Ukraine, the price of gasoline skyrocketed, and we as a nation were immediately reminded of how reliant we continue to be on a global commodity that's subject to disruptions of international markets. The only way to secure our economic prosperity, our environment, and our national security is to break the addiction to oil as soon as possible. And so to do that, we must transition to clean energy technologies. Now, I think that we could work across the aisle on this. I think that we could work together on supporting the research that we need to advance new clean energy technologies that will both make us energy independent and help us reach our nation's climate goals. I'm sorry that my colleagues didn't support the CHIPS and Science Act that's made investments in our energy and science agencies. But I will also say, I do think, and I'm looking forward to working with Chair Duncan and with our friends on the other side of the aisle. We've already talked, and I do think that we can find bipartisan ways to both reduce our dependence on the international oil market and also to develop clean energy that will address the climate crisis. But what we have to do, Madam Chair, in my opinion, we have to stop retreating to our corners and seeing everything as a zero-sum game for whatever side. The markets and the utility companies and others have realized this. They have been moving to clean energy sources as fast as they can, and they need our help to be able to have the research and development to be able to make this secure, to make the grid secure, and to make the sources so that we can transition to a clean energy economy, be independent, and also address the climate crisis. So I look forward to working with you and with this committee. I'm excited about it, but we have to really hold out the branch and not talking about just drilling. With that, Mr. Chair, or Madam Chair, I yield back.